Okay, and the last question. What has been your favorite moment since you have converted?
My favorite moment was just this one time when, like, it was late at night and I was just in my room. I was reading Quran and then I was praying, and like my man, like at that night, it just like got so high. Whereas last week when we went to Patterson, Islam of Fayoumi, he said there's a story or something. I forget who it was. I think it was Ali. And he said that, you know, if the hijab of like this world was removed from me, and I could see like the paradise and the hellfire and everything and Allah, then my faith wouldn't be any different. And I don't want to say like that's what I felt, but it sort of is in a way, because I felt like Allah was like above me and like right in front of me, and like the paradise and the hellfire were like right there too, and it all just became like so clear. There was like no doubt whatsoever, and like I don't feel that most of the time. Like everybody's faith goes up and down, but just remembering that, it's like something for me to hold on to and remember. So that was probably like the best feeling that I've had from being a Muslim, or one of the best times.
I would say like the best like moments in my life since I've been Muslim was like literally the day I became Muslim. And there was a dream that I had. Like it's like by far like the best dream I ever had. I had a dream that Surah Rahman, chapter 55 in the Quran, was being recited in my dream, like the entire chapter. And when I woke up, I still heard it. And like I had ended up like moving because I like senior year in high school, there was a fire in my building and we had to move, so we ended up moving to another part of Brooklyn called Brownsville, and there were no Muslims in this building, so there's no way that somebody could have like played it on the radio or anything like that. And I woke up and it was the voice of Abdul Samad Abu Bakr, and it was like such like a long recitation and stretched out. Like I started hearing it in my dream, and when I woke up, I still heard it. And I started looking like, where is this coming from? And it came from like the wall. So I was putting my ear like to the wall, and I was like, yo, this is cool. Like, I'm like, this is really cool. It's like basically like I was almost late for school. It's like I didn't care about anything until like, and then the whole chapter was recited, and then it just stopped. Now I'm saying to myself, oh damn, now I gotta go to school. And the year I made Hajj, and I'm in 05, and I remember like going into like the main entrance of the sacred mosque, Masjid Haram, and I saw the Kaaba, and I was like, wow. I was like, like on the inside, I was like, yeah, I'm really, really here. It was amazing. I was just, and then like after the excitement, the reality kicked in. I really can't believe I'm here. First it was like, yeah, I'm here, and then it was like wow, I'm really here. Like those are like the three like most exciting moments.
I think my favorite moment is coming home. Like I converted abroad, and then I lived abroad for 2.5 years after that. So I had never really been Muslim in the United States. So I had, I had never experienced it here. And I came home, and the closest masjid to where I live is like an hour away. But I traveled up there to pray Jummah. And when I got there, the imam was this guy he'd been Muslim for like I think like 30 years, but he originally came through the nation. And he was born and raised in the South and lived there all his life. And he started to recite Quran, but in sort of like a Southern accent. And I was like, oh, it's like it's Islam, but it's the South at the same time. It really felt like I'd like come home in a real way. So that was good.
when I took Shahada, I really was still nervous about what my family would say and what they would think. And one of my very, very close friends took me and all of her 5 kids to the masjid. And I asked, Sheikh Abbas asked me, do you have any questions before you take Shahada? I said, how do I explain to my family? And he said, you don't have to explain anything to your family. Learn to live your life as a Muslim, and they'll come to understand. Alhamdulillah. And that, really, took a weight off my shoulders. Alhamdulillah. I took Shahada, alhamdulillah. And my friend's 8-year-old son said, I've known him since birth, since he was born. I had known this child, and I saw the glow in his eye. 8 years old. He said, "Congratulations, Auntie, you're a Muslim." It captured my heart. I really, I still remember it. Another favorite moment of mine when I was led in Salah by another very close friend's son. He was 6 years old or 7 years old at the time. This 6 or 7-year-old is leading me in Salah. It really captured me. When I prayed Fajr for the first time in the masjid here, in congregation, right after Ramadan last year, when we saw the youth just culminate and come together, and we saw this youth group really take a completely different direction than it had ever taken. To see the excitement on people's faces, and also, it was a dua of mine to see something like that happen, and these are the signs of Allah. When you ask, He answers, and absolutely, after taking Shahada, I think, you get to a certain point, you're trying to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you know that you have to do something different. And something came to me, and I was looking to get married for a while, and I had met people, and people were introduced to me, and it didn't seem to work out. And I was at a point in my life where I'm like, I know that I need to get married to further get closer to Allah. And the moment I realized that when I met my husband, I had known him for a couple of months, and the moment that we realized that we were going to get married, subhanAllah, I think really just, these are the signs of Allah. These are the things that really capture you. I think that was probably one of my favorite moments.
Okay, these are the questions from the audience. Before converting, have you ever had any doubts to actually doing so? Was there a personal obstacle that you had to overcome in order to muster the courage to join the Nation of Islam?
Arzu, you want to pick a couple people to answer a few questions since we have a lot? You want to do it that way?
Okay, we can do it that way. I don't know how to choose.
Just pick a question.
How about we start
Garrett,
with
we'll let Garrett answer that one.
Wait,
Okay.
answer.
Should we ask them?
Yeah.
Before converting, have you ever had any doubts to actually doing so? Was there a personal obstacle that you had to overcome in order to muster the courage to join the Nation of Islam?
The Nation of Islam.
What nation?
Yeah.
All of us.
Oh, you mean the all?
Okay. Yeah, that
That was
makes
my goal.
sense.
I think he's the
As a misnomer.
Like I said, there was once I realized that Islam was true guidance from Allah, there was absolutely no doubt in my mind that this is something that I need, to help me, find my purpose. Because, like I said, before I became Muslim, it's I was very doubtful as to what my purpose for even existing was. And when I found out that Islam was the truth, I said to myself, this is why I exist. To worship the one who created me properly. This is my purpose. So, in knowing that, there was absolutely nothing that, I was going to allow anyone or anything to prevent me from doing that. I wasn't going to allow anyone or anything to prevent me from completing my humanity in a sense. Because when you become Muslim, when you make the decision, I think this brother actually mentioned, is that whether you're Muslim or not, you still have to make the decision to consciously worship Allah, because Islam is voluntary submission. It's not like as human beings, and this applies to the jinn as well, the other creation that Allah created from smokeless fire. We have free will. We have the option to obey Allah or not. Like, we're not, even though Allah could, Allah doesn't force us to submit to Him and obey Him. And because of that, every single instant and moment of our lives, we have to make conscious choices as to whether we're going to do things that are going to be in accordance with Allah's commandments, or whether we're going to be sinful. So in light of that, Islam being what it is, voluntary submission, is that every single day as a Muslim, we have to make the decision whether you're going to be Muslim or not. Like I can say for me, myself personally, every time I look into the mirror, I have to make the decision whether I'm going to be a servant of Allah or a sinner. I have to make that decision every single day. And any and all of my decisions, whether they lean towards obedience or disobedience, I have to live with that. I have to be held accountable for that. So, like I said, it was Islam in and of itself. It's what gives you. It's what gives sense to your humanity. It's what makes you a human being in and of itself. Because Allah actually speaks about people who reject His signs and reject His guidance, and Allah describes them as being lower than cattle. So if a human being really wants to raise themselves up and uplift themselves and find self-fulfillment in their existence, it necessitates you to be Muslim. And not just become Muslim, but to actually be Muslim. Because there's even a difference between just becoming Muslim and then just not doing anything afterwards. Like the brother mentioned in the translation of the ayah, is when Allah says, those who believe and do good. You can't just say you believe and not do good, and you can't just do good and not believe. They both go together. You can't separate them. So this is, being Muslim is what gives, how should I say, what's the right word for me to say it? It gives meaning to your humanity. It's what defines your humanity. That's what it is. It's what defines it in and of itself. Being Muslim is, as a statement of fact, as a matter of fact, it defines what your humanity is. And without that, it's not even fair for you to consider yourself a complete human being.
Okay, this question is for Will. How did your families react when you told them you wanted to become Muslim? So I guess when you came back from your trip as a Muslim.
They tried to be as supportive as they could, and I feel really blessed in that, because they took it. They didn't like it, but they took it like as gracefully as possible. It was the first time I'd ever seen my dad cry, which was really hard. But it was difficult, and it was a situation where I feel like I sort of had to be the parent for the first time, because like for once, like they were like completely lost, and I sort of like held the cards, and that was new for them. It was new for me. So it was just a process of talking to them, and I guess it took a lot of patience, because it wasn't just it wasn't like one conversation that like fixed everything, and it's still not as if like everything is perfect. But over time they've become more accepting of it. They've come to understand what it is I'm actually doing, and they don't just have like these wild conceptions that they think of on their own. And they still have questions, and they still want to know stuff. But I feel really lucky that they're asking me questions instead of just telling me what it is I'm doing and making a bunch of assumptions about it.
This is a general question for all of you, only because it ties in with the last one. Do any of you have a family member that's thinking to convert to Islam because of you guys? Or friends?
Well, I got a little sister who's mentally retarded. She has Down syndrome, and for me, I chose the name Hakim because it means wise. The logic and truth of Islam is what led me to Islam, and using my intellect. But that's not going to be the case for most other people. Like, I'll do da'wah, all the time to tons of people I meet, and I do da'wah to like all my family members. And they'll acknowledge like, yeah, I believe in absolute monotheism and God has no partners, and then they'll be leaning towards like, that Muhammad is a prophet of Allah, but they don't take shahada or make any effort whatsoever to like understand it or get more knowledge about it. Whereas my younger sister, who has Down syndrome, she's lacking in intellect, but that's completely made up for in her heart, because she's one of the best people I know, and she's got one of the best hearts I know. And so when I told her about Islam and I explained everything to her, she believes me, and there's no doubt in her mind. And when I tell her about Jannah and the oneness of Allah, she believes it. And I'll ask her, Beth, how many gods are there? She'll just be like, just one, and she'll put up her hand. Because it's important. I don't believe Allah would ever send her to hell, but it's important for me for her to know about these things, and I want her to know about these things because nobody else tells her about it. And it just goes to show you that someone could be have a PhD, be extremely smart, be making $1 million a year, be a doctor, whatever. But you can come to them with facts like this and they won't even understand, because it's not just a mental thing, it's also a psychological, and it's also a reflection on their heart as well. And if Allah doesn't want them guided to truth, they're not going to be guided. And whoever Allah wants guided to the truth, no one's going to stop them. So just the fact that my sister, who is mentally retarded, has more faith than people who have IQs of genius IQs, and people who can logically understand these things much more than she can, it just goes to show you, Allah works in mysterious ways sometimes, and mind isn't everything. It's also what's in a person's heart too. That's extremely important. So that's what I would say to that.
Can you find your family that decided to convert?
Actually, no. I would. What I can say is that they've noticed, and this is why having good character is so important, and this is why the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the heaviest thing weighed on the scales will be character, because people don't really care about what you say; they care about what you do, the way you behave. And I noticed that the way people responded to me, or their receptiveness to me as a Muslim, changed almost immediately when I began to become more religious. Because when I wasn't religious, people just viewed me as that regular dude, all right, whatever. But when people started to see me take Islam as a practice seriously, their attitude toward me automatically changed in a positive way. And whether it's family or people I knew growing up, they saw the change. And that's what's important. One of the things that we lose sight of, referring to da'wah, is that we start to think that we are the source of guidance as opposed to the conveyors of guidance. And the dissemination of guidance or the bestowing of guidance is exclusively Allah's job. It's Allah's responsibility, not ours. Only Allah can guide people. Even in the case of Muhammad ﷺ with his uncle, Abu Talib, right? Allah admonished the Prophet ﷺ in the Quran, and Allah says, you cannot guide who you love. And that's something that I had that resonated in my mind and in my heart to a great deal, because I remember getting into debates with family, getting into debates with friends, schoolmates, and they just wouldn't accept. And I had to accept the fact that I'm not the one who holds their hearts in my hands. The condition of the hearts are in the hands of Allah. So I, by myself, referring to being able to guide people to Allah, I'm nothing. And guidance is exclusively from Allah. But at the same time, that doesn't alleviate me from the responsibility of being a good Muslim. Because even if I don't say anything, my actions will always have more value than my words. And there's proof in the Sunnah about people becoming Muslim exclusively because of the way the Prophet has treated them. Exclusively because of that. And if I were to do a poll, and if I were to ask people by a show of hands, how many people became Muslim because of the way you treated them? Seriously, by a show of hands, how many people became Muslim as a result of the way you treated them? Nobody had their hands raised. So that's a very big problem. And how many people are in here? About 40 people, right? So 0 out of 40 people became Muslim as a result of the way we treated them, right? That number is going to be opposite. Every single one of us in this room should be able to have our hands raised as opposed to at least one person, not opposed, but referring to one person becoming Muslim because of the way we treated them. And it's really a shame that none of us can raise our hand to affirm that someone became Muslim because of the way we treated them. That's really sad. And that's the thing that we need to focus on referring to da'wah. Da'wah is an invitation. It's a calling. It's a propagation. Da'wah doesn't equal guidance. Because, again, guidance is in the hands of Allah and not ours. So the only thing that we have to do is to make sure that we are doing what Allah says to do and refraining from what Allah says not to do to the best of our ability. And that is the true da'wah. Everything that we say and do which is the benefit of the people. Even to the extent where the Prophet he said, the Muslim is the one who protects the people from his statements and his actions. So if we're not at least doing that, if we're not sheltering other people from our evil, then that in and of itself is contrary to the da'wah that we proclaim to profess and to propagate anyway.
I've had friends convert. I don't know if it had anything to do with me.
And what about you, Heather? Are your friends or family that converted
No, not that I know of. I continue to talk to my family about Islam. And the more I talk to, especially my mother and my sister and my brother, the more I talk to them, the more it seems to make sense for them. It's funny, certain things that, like, when I'm talking to my mother, and she's just like, yeah. But my husband will talk to my mother, and she's like, oh, that makes sense. As if, like, I don't know, she didn't hear my voice at all. But I have a young brother, and I've been talking to him a lot about Islam. And he's recently, he's at that age where he's trying to find himself, he's trying to find life, and he started to really actually question his faith. And I said, he said, I really don't want to lose it. I want to get closer to God. And I said, well, take that as a blessing from God that you want to get closer to Him, and you aren't losing faith. Because He guides whom He will, and He disguides whom He will, and whom He wills as well. Allahu Alam, I mean, as the brother said, all we can do is continue to show good character, and I will testify to that. What drew me to Islam was, in the beginning, the character of Muslims. That's what drew me to ask questions about Islam. And that is one fear that I do have, and that's my constant dua. Allah make me a good representation of the deen, especially for my family. And I know there are certain things that I have not fulfilled that I should have fulfilled. Just as a human being, just as a daughter or a sister or a cousin. And we have to remember that those are our obligations. Our obligation is to be a good Muslim. Our obligation is to al-insan, to help mankind. And by helping mankind and by representing the deen, as the brother said, properly, then inshallah, that's how we guide people, inshallah, with the will of Allah.
I want to just add something very quickly to what Heather said. One of the reasons why, like, the people closest to us, our families, reject us is because we are their family. Like, our parents, they look to us as little snot-nosed brat. I used to clean your diapers. It's like they'll never see us as equal. And that's the thing. So a lot of times we take that personally, and we get frustrated and we get angry. But we have to detach our personal feelings away from, like, the cause of the da'wah.
That's very true.
And even like people who we grow up with, like, and the reason why character is so important is because once someone sees you a certain way and you change, it doesn't matter how much you change, they're always going to have that point of reference of what you used to be.
Yeah.
Like me, like when I grew up, like when I was irreligious, like the party scene, the drug scene, all that type of stuff, right? People don't forget that.
Yeah.
And they're not going to forget it. So that may be one of the reasons why they are not receptive. And it's just something that we just have to struggle with, just something that we have to deal with. So, and that takes a lot of patience and all of that.
Yeah.
Heather actually came up to me a bunch of times. I've been talking to my mom, I talk to my mom, I talk to mom. But for some reason, when you talk to her, she listens and she accepts it more than I talk to her. Because it's coming from you. You're not her child. So keep talking to her. Keep talking to her. And the same thing with my family. When and my whole family's not fully practicing. Inshallah, they will be. When I speak to my families, with my family, it's almost like they're looking at me. Who are you to say this? So if you do have other brothers and sisters in Islam, ask them to help you. And do it through the back door. Never do it through the front door. They ask you a question or anything. It relates to Islam. Everything about life relates to Islam. Come through the back door. When they ask you a question about something or they're upset about something, it's so easy to put dawah to that. But she always tells me, please, keep talking to my mother. Keep talking to my mother. Because she doesn't listen to me, because I'm her daughter, so she doesn't hear. She won't hear her. When you speak, she hears you. So, to test your point.
So for those of you that don't know, this is my husband. The other thing also that I found is helpful with family, not just my husband, but my female friends. When I was getting married, and I had so many questions, and she was upset with me, but she wasn't upset with me. She just was confused, and she went to my Muslim friends, and they really helped her and guided her and held her hand. And now my mother will come with me to the masjid. And so for others that are around me, it's really important that we surround ourselves with good Muslims, because when I bring her here, or when she calls my friends, or I bring them to the house, or whatever it may be, then she's like, oh, maybe my daughter's not so crazy. It really does hit home. It really does start to hit home, inshallah.
This I'm going to ask each of you too. These questions are so good, I feel bad only asking one person. What advice would you give to someone who is thinking of becoming a Muslim, but they are afraid of hurting their family?
Can I answer that first? Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you
No.
off, but because I asked this question, this was something that I really, really struggled with. I studied Islam for at least 10 years, and that was the one thing that held me back for a long time. And Allah will protect you. It came to me finally when I decided to formally take Shahada that if I'm doing this for the sake of God and for nothing else, not for another person, not because it's cool, not because Muslims are nice people, I'm doing it for the sake of Allah, that He would protect me. And I said, if I am surrendering to Him, He will protect me. When Dr. Abbas, when I was taking Shahada, he said, do you have any questions? I said, how do I explain to my family? He said, learn to live your life as a Muslim, and they will understand. And it's not as bad as I thought it would be. Yes, right now, my father will not speak to me. He won't speak to me. But for 4 years, he was like, yeah, go ahead. When I was out visiting him in November, I needed a place to pray. He's like, okay, I'll stop the car. We fear all of these things, and there are certain fears that I still have. When I was looking to get married, I'm like, oh my gosh, when is it going to happen? But patience, Allah will make the way for you. Allah will make the way for you. Don't have fear if you're doing it for His sake only. Yes, it may be hard, but He will ease your pain, and ask Him to guide you and to protect you and to guide your family and to make it easy for you, because He answers our dua, He answers our supplication. So.
I think that's really good advice, and I guess I would say just don't expect it to happen overnight.
Yeah.
Just be prepared to work with them. Treat them like somebody you love. Like you're not going to give up on them, and inshallah they're not going to give up on you. So just be prepared to work over a long period of time, and be prepared to sort of like reverse the relationship. Like I was saying earlier, it was sort of like the first time when I felt like I was parenting them, and it was really strange. I felt really awkward doing that, but it was a learning experience for all of us, and I think that's a good way to look at it. Is they're going to learn from you about what Islam is, and you're going to learn from them like what your sort of like new negotiated relationship is going to be like, because you're going to have to sort of figure that out again. So just, be prepared to invest some time.
I had mentioned earlier that I have like authority issues, so I have a kind of like stick it to the man type of approach. So my advice would be to just do it and have no regrets in the decision, and don't, like the sister said, don't do it just because you think it's cool, but do it because you know that this is the only way to properly worship the one who created you. Do it for that reason alone, and be forthright in your decision, and don't hold back, and don't fear the negative reactions of people, because fearing the negative reactions of people will prevent you from doing everything. It'll prevent you from doing everything. If you're afraid of wearing yellow because people around you don't like yellow, you'll never wear yellow. If you don't want this job because people around you don't want you to have the job, but you know this is the best job for you, you won't get the job. It's just like if you go into college and all your friends, you want to go to Harvard, but all of your friends want to go to Rutgers. You really going to settle? You're really going to pass up Harvard to go to Rutgers? I don't think so. I mean, Rutgers is cool. I know the MSA at Rutgers is like fantastic. But I'm just saying, in comparison, would you pass up Harvard to go to Rutgers? No. So if you're not going to pass up Harvard to go to Rutgers, why would you pass up the paradise to go to the fire? Because if you pass up the opportunity to become Muslim, where do you think you're going to go? That's where you're going to go. So if you really believe that Islam is the way that the Creator wants you to live, because Islam isn't just a religion, Islam is a lifestyle. It's how you live life. It's how you exist. It's what sets the tone. It defines your existence in this material existence. It defines your state of being. So if you believe that Islam is the proper definition of how you are to function in this material existence, then just be forthright and then just do it, and don't be afraid.
What was the question
Do you have any advice to somebody that would want to convert but they're scared they're going to hurt their family?
Yeah, I guess just like seek knowledge. Like for my family, it's like mixed, and nobody says anything to me really. Like, because if they do, they know I'll argue them to death. So, just like seek knowledge, and then if somebody does have a problem, be like, all right, well, what issue do you have a problem with? And if they say like, oh, well, you're gonna beat your wives or something, then you seek knowledge on that, and you learn that that's not Islamic, and you learn the most you can do is like tap them, and you break it down for them. And if they're honest, then they'll hear you, and they'll be like, oh, well, what about this? You gotta strap a bomb on yourself and blow up that building. Like, I know most people aren't ignorant. I mean, that ignorant, but some are, especially like the older generations, like people who just watch like mainstream media all day. But you seek knowledge, and then you respond to them, and you give them the correct Islamic response. And they can go down the line, bam, 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 bam. You know, anything like, oh, well, you don't love Jesus anymore, like, lovely. And you say no, like, you know, the Quran mentions Jesus 25 times. There's a chapter named Mary in our book. You know, so anything that they come up with, you come up with a response. And besides that, it's like they already said, you know, you be patient, and you be merciful to your family, and you have good character, and then they'll see in your character when that changes for the better, then they'll respect you more for it, and they'll realize it's because of Islam, not in spite of Islam, that the changes in your attitude and your characteristics are there, and then they'll respect you for it more.
Can I just add one thing? You have to, I mean, we all said that you need to be patient with your family, but you need to understand that they're coming from a place of concern. You know, our families they love us, and they want the best for us, and they are coming from a place of concern. So it's important for them for for us to tell them and continually tell them that, Islam is not a bad religion, and we are still their, son, daughter, cousin, sister, brother, whatever you are to them, and you always will be, and not to reject them, as frustrated as you may get, because I can't say they will, but they may say very nasty things, and you have to take it in heed and not react in an Islamic way, and let them know as much as they hate the fact that you may become a Muslim, you will still always love them unconditionally, and that's your obligation as a Muslim. So,
this is a quick question to the brother in the middle. Were you at the ICNA convert panel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quick question, quick answer.